That's the first sound. The first sound the hot mic gets. Just my grunt. All right. What is up, guys? Hopefully you heard that noise, an appropriate one to kick off the late Slate Sweat and Swap show. We're going to sweat and swap all over everything. I'm Chris Spags, joined by a man who's going to help me on this voyage, a man who you should turn to for all your DFS advice, except Norman Powell's playing time and Draymond Green's playing time. He's Greg Ehrenberg. How you doing, Greg?
You know what's funny is, so the Draymond Green thing, which, I mean, we could talk about that all day if we wanted to. I generally just found it to be hilarious. And I'm sure that most people who are listening probably know what happened with Draymond Green yesterday, where Spags and I both liked him for DraftKings for the 2-game slate yesterday. He got late swapped, and some just doofus shows up on Twitter and just decides to spend his entire night tweeting at Spags and I, who somehow he thinks we have inside information on the ongoing of the Warriors injury report, which could not be further from the case. I'm sure if anybody wants to go to my Twitter feed at @GEhrenbergDFS, you could see some of the back and forth. Well, some of it anyway, because he ended up deleting his Twitter account by the end of it anyway, which is such a fail of a troll attempt. You go to troll somebody, I respond, and you just panic and delete your Twitter account. Like, what do you expect? Like, I'm fine with trolls. I'm going to engage with people, but bring a little bit of something to the table. I want to have some sort of equal to go back and forth with. I don't want you to just delete your account because I respond to you once and get some likes on it. At least have some balls, stay in the game. But beyond that, what does this guy think happens? What does he think? What does he think is the process? He thinks that Draymond Green gets hurt in warmups, and Steve Kerr goes, "Oh shit, I better text Greg." Like that's what the Warriors. That's their process. They're gonna go alert Spags and I and tell us like, "Hey, just so you guys know, take Draymond Green out of your lineups," which we didn't even do, by the way. We both played Draymond Green, so what idiots are we to have inside information and then just to purposefully lose money on it? But yeah, go ahead.
Some men just want to watch the world burn. I guess that's the guy's take, that we were the Joker holding it, watching our own money lit on fire. No, Greg and I were talking about it before I came on the show, and Tyler involved too, with his microphone glitching and sounding like the most deep-voiced, manly man who's ever lived. So we have a lot of fun here before the show too. But I had mentioned, like, I was so heavy on Draymond that I'm never an email support, never complain guy for the most part. I assume that if it's fair, everybody else will get a hold of it. But I felt like, I got extra screwed because I was 8x the field Draymond in the main slate. I was also playing Draymond 100% in the late slate for the limited lineups I put in there. So I tried, and they were like, no, everybody else is affected. And I found it to be unfair. But then I opened my Twitter and I saw this guy, and Greg, to his credit, if you want to check Greg's tweets at @GEhrenbergDFS, you can see some of the wreckage they were left behind. But the guy was mad at me for saying to play Tyrese Maxey, even though I didn't know that Tyrese Maxey was even a play by the time I was doing a show. He deleted that tweet though. So to his credit, he kept his insanity limited solely to Draymond Green. But just one of those nights here. And that's what happens on a late slate sweat and swap show. We're too busy sweating and swapping and exchanging texts with Steve Kerr about things that sometimes you don't even know the right plays. You're just here having a good time, texting all your friends in the NBA who know all the information and then not using it at all to your advantage.
No, and then to the other part on the Raptors, that is just Josh and I being idiots. So I don't even know how this happened, where the Raptors starting lineup came out, and Josh and I just both read it wrong. We saw Bembry starting, and we just seemed like, okay, Bembry's starting in place of Powell, and it was with Lowry out, they put Bembry in the starting lineup and took Baines out. But yeah, somehow Josh and I just both read that starting lineup wrong. So we talked about reducing minutes for Norman Powell and the other Raptors guys for a good 10 minutes before we realized they were idiots. And Josh goes, "Wait, who's starting for the Raptors?" Which, of course, is only because everybody's DMing us in the Awesemo, like Alex is messaging us, Jordan's messaging us. So we just looked like total nincompoops. But whatever. We ended up getting back on Norman Powell. He had a good first half, but who knows? He might not play the fourth quarter because the Bucks are, in true Rockets fashion, just getting their asses kicked tonight.
So if you're not familiar with the late slate sweat and swap show, what we're doing here, or swap and sweat, really just say them interchangeably, because I'm going to do that every single time I say the name. I'm just going to flip them around just because I honestly forget which one the proper branding is each time. The LNSS or the LSS, LS cubed, the LS3. Is that, do we have a cool name for it that we can shorten it to, since Late Night Hammer didn't work?
I mean, it might be the late night hammer sweat swap and spit, right? I mean, why not just throw more suggestive words into it?
But normally on the show, it's not a typical live before lock show where normally you'll tune in, we'll talk about the news, we'll break everything down, we'll painfully stretch over every detail. We're going to talk about the main slate that's going on right now, which does have a I would say a very disappointing situation with Giannis, a guy that to me projected so well. I didn't realize I would get to him as heavy as I did earlier in the day. Ended up playing 100% of them. We also got some Dennis Schroeder news that we'll hit on here. Waiting to see how Alex shakes out the rotations there, which of course are available to you at awesemo.com/join. All the projections and the minutes and the ownership projections all there for you. And we got some things to hit on. And I have to say, one outcome, Greg, that I did not anticipate today was Giannis getting outscored by Norman Powell in this situation. At least in the first half, Giannis is at the line now. Very easy for him to rack up stats quickly with him playing a little more aggressively as they're playing from behind. But I was on the tip-off today with Ben Rasa, and all show long, my bit was just defaulting to his genius here. And he was like, yeah, Milwaukee's going to get smoked. And now I feel this must be how the YouTube chat feels when they listen to one of our experts. And I'm like, oh, Ben's so sharp. Like he knows. And now here we are. And Toronto's just putting it on him in a way that I don't think anybody would have guessed.
No, not at all. And I mean, the other thing too, that we definitely wouldn't have guessed, that Dennis Schroeder just ruled out for COVID apparently, or at least the COVID health and safety protocol. So I'm sweating, swapping, hammering, spitting all my lineups, moving all that around so that I could get some Alex Caruso in there. It's going to impact my Corey Joseph ownership. Now I'm really unhappy with a bunch of guys I had exposure to in the early game because I mean, who knew that this was going to be a scenario?
Yeah, Corey Joseph was a guy that I had a lot of in my early builds that I think I'm going to be pivoting around. And we talk about it a lot here in this show in particular. And we've sort of been trying to beat the drum, I think Greg and I in particular, but a lot of our guys, Eric Lindquist, one of our regulars on this show, who does a Slate starter podcast with Rinpack. We've all been talking a lot more about late swapping and the importance of it, and trying to take the lead from so many lineups out there every single week where it's the ones that end up finishing atop the tournaments. And now there's a certain priority to it where you could honestly not cash by not late swapping. And Greg, I feel like this is the question we have to ask here. Corey Joseph or an Alex Caruso, who you would expect gets the minutes here. And of course, he does resemble our own founder here, one of our founders, Alex Baker. So give him another point or two on the projection. But do you feel like he's a better play than Corey Joseph? And I think too, given the box score watching that may go on there, that Corey Joseph just had a 30 fantasy point day. I think it's a question to ask, and it's one that I'm curious to see how the ownership looks on.
Yeah, so as a GPP play, and this is twofold also, because we're going to have a decent amount of the first game finished by the time that the next game starts. So if you have lineups that are dead, I assume that Alex Caruso is going to project for not nearly as much ownership as Corey Joseph. I could be wrong on that. That's just my assumption right now. If you have lineups that look like they're sitting dead, it makes a whole lot of sense to swap off what is likely a chalky Corey Joseph for a slightly less popular Alex Caruso, just to get a little bit of leverage and potentially, catch up to the field on lineups that are, already going to be dead there. Or not leverage, but just pivot there just to try to catch up points on lineups. In terms of fantasy points, I still have Corey Joseph projected for more, but I think that Alex Caruso is somebody I'm going to get to in more GPP lineups just because of what I expect the difference in ownership is going to be.
Yeah, I'm doing a little swap-timize right now, and I'll see how it looks for me. And Alex Caruso is bubbling up. I had a lot of DeAndre Bembry, so one of my value slots is going to be gone. And Bembry's been fine. I feel like he's probably not going to be the thing that kills me today. Definitely not as much as Giannis may be at 100%. But for me, I'm getting 80% LeBron, getting a 66% Caruso now. And for me, Corey Joseph has actually fallen quite a bit. He's down to 14%. In my run before, I had him at... Oh, no, I had him at 12%. So I guess I gained 2% more Corey Joseph and also got Caruso. I don't know what that means, but I guess you got to take it when you're swap-optimizing.
Yeah. I thought I was way lower on Corey Joseph than anybody else was, but apparently not the case because you had him even less than I did. But yeah, so I still think Corey Joseph, if you're playing cash games, you want to have him in cash lineups. On the whole, I still think Corey Joseph is a good play. But actually, do we have updated ownership yet? Because that would be
not the last that I looked, okay. But let's see. I'll give a quick refresh here. And sometimes it takes a little bit here, especially with the moving news. And the main slate is definitely the focus for the ownership projections, but we usually get one good run at least in before the late slate hits. So we'll keep our eyes peeled on it and make sure you're playing along too at awesemo.com/join for yourself. One other thing that I need to tilt about real fast too, Bryn Forbes. Fantastic start. And I was like, I got double the field on Bryn Forbes. And now that I don't have Norman Powell, I'm feeling pretty bad about that. And Bryn Forbes just did something, so I'm excited for it. But there's no joy that goes away quicker than a quick Bryn Forbes start and then immediately just him realizing, oh yeah, that's right, I don't do much. He just hangs out and lays back.
So as somebody who watched the game while I was eating dinner in between shows that I did here, a quick overlay, just enough time to eat some rice, eat some ribs, go to the bathroom, hop right back on the YouTube channel. I was watching the game. Bryn Forbes really got skimped by the scorekeeper. There was a steal that should have been his that didn't go to him, and there was a rebound that they gave to Brooke Lopez that should have been his. So, I mean, this is obviously from somebody who, because who's watching a Bucks game and is just paying attention to Bryn Forbes. It would be me, the guy who said that I thought that Bryn Forbes was a better value play than Corey Joseph earlier in the day. And now I feel bad about that because I would have rather just swapped from Corey Joseph to Alex Caruso if I would have had that flexibility, because I would have liked Caruso more than Forbes or Corey Joseph, but now I have Forbes taking up a lot of my lineup slots on DraftKings.
Yeah, I mean, Forbes is a fine player relative to a 3-game slate. Certainly not one you're expecting to have. Honestly, even as good of a game as he had in that first quarter, you're not probably seeing that too often. But yeah, I'm with you. The stat keeping sometimes when you watch these games closely, like that's one spot where I know we have a lot of our peers who won't even watch the games, who just will pay no attention at all because they just want to know how it's going. They don't want to do the live sweat. For me, the whole joy is watching the games and rooting for my guys and being like, oh, sweet, like, you know, whatever. Whoever's not Norman Powell's having a great day. I love to see it. And I feel like this is one of those spots where, you know, there are going to be people who did not watch that at all and then won't be mad about what Bryn Forbes could have done. But that's sort of the pain of being a game watcher like we are, where we're just every moment we're soaking it all in. We're analyzing all the matchups. DVP is really what it's all about. That's what we always say.
Yeah, that's it. No, it was really, I mean, so here's the other thing with NBA also is, people claim they watch every single game. That's BS. Nobody has the time to watch, like, especially on a Wednesday when there's like 11 games. Nobody's watching start to finish all 11 games. I have like League Pass on my iPad. I watch bits and pieces of different games. This happened to be a national TV game I was watching while I was eating dinner. So, I mean, I skim around and watch games, typically the ones that I have the most interest in from a fantasy standpoint. But there's only so much game watching you can do because there's a lot of games in most nights, especially when we have a condensed schedule this season.
Yeah, I try to watch a good amount, but yeah, you certainly, even with me where I keep a couple games open on my laptop, like you're missing things. It's hard to do it. And, you know, the data is always going to be more important than your eye test. But sometimes on a day like today, you sometimes see some things and you just want to strangle a scorekeeper or whatever, an official score for the NBA. But that's life here in DFS. Let's dig more into the Dennis Schroeder news. And, you know, we can jump around here as we always do. I feel like the L3S, people are also big fans of the L3S thing, which honestly, I could get behind it. I feel like we sound like we could be a hip hop group. We sound like we could be a fancy car, maybe even a pro wrestling stable. I feel like there's a lot of ways we can go here.
Yeah, well, what I like about it is that we could have an album cover. It's the nerd ass Greg picture, and then above it, it's just you turning your hat around like you're Ash Ketchum. You know, like flipping the hat around.
I think there's potential to the branding overall. I know my arms would be crossed in it, and I'd be like, yeah, this is.
So, and then what position is your hat in? Is it the money sign forward? Do you have the hat sideways?
Maybe it's like here, so it's still. Or look at my hair. My hair came with that one.
With your hair, with the one strand of hair.
Oh, I can't turn it too early here. The people got to give the people what they wanted at the halfway point. I don't know. Our boy over under for the record, growing on me here. I think learning to play along with bits more rather than just being mean to us all the time. How many likes do we need to get the Spags washed player of the night? As we always say here, washed basically a slur on this channel to me at this point, where if you say that, you might as well put little asterisks in it because I don't want to see it anymore. Dusty, I think Laffy said during one of the shows, disheveled might be the play, but washed, nobody's washed on this slate. But if anybody's washed, it's Marc Gasol, who I actually was hyping earlier today on the tip-off because I thought I'd get more of him just on the chance that he saw a few more minutes, because he did play more last time, though, granted, going against Cat. And I would say our boy News God has not taken the same shine to over-under, but I try to keep it up in mind. People can win me over time. But I would say that, there's I don't even know what I was saying, honestly. That distracted me completely.
Yeah, I don't know what you were gonna say either. I was gonna try to help you out you're talking
about
the
wash player, yeah,
Marc Gasol.
Yeah, Marc Gasol. So Marc Gasol, if there were one player here who I'd say fits the wash criteria, like really out of all these games, there's nobody who's washed in the two late games coming up here besides Gasol. So I think by process of elimination, there really isn't a lot more. If we had Rondo still on the Lakers, like that would clearly be the one that you go to. But for me, Marc Gasol, I think there's still some chance of being useful. And his price, though, I didn't realize was quite as high as it was. And Awesemo only had him in for 19 minutes in the most recent projections there. So Marc Gasol, I think, fits the criteria, but still, if you are playing him on a wing and a prayer, even relative to a 2-game slate.
Yeah, I think I'm going to get some exposure to him now just because there's extra usage available in the starting lineup with Dennis Schroeder out. Obviously, I don't expect him to play extra minutes. He's not going to run the point without Schroeder out there, except the Lakers. The other thing also, we were talking about the Lakers point guard rotation before we started.
Yep.
And they don't have very many point guards. I assume they start Alex Caruso. then LeBron's going to play backup point guard minutes, maybe Quinn Cook also. But this could mean that we just see some really weird lineup combinations. Like maybe we see Marc Gasol play together with Montrezl Harrell at some point where LeBron's at point guard and they just play really big lineups because the Lakers are pretty thin now that Anthony Davis is out also. They have, the guards who they have available, if we consider LeBron a guard, there's LeBron, Alex Caruso. I mean, Talen Horton-Tucker is more of a wing, but we consider him a guard for the purpose of this. KCP, Quinn Cook. I mean, not necessarily, you can't call some of these guys washed because they never had anything to begin with. But I mean, it's slim pickings.
Yeah, I've got some rate data here for Caruso and LeBron, which I think is going to be interesting here. But guys, hit the like button. We actually, I think, might have our most viewers ever on this show, at least in the most recent iterations that we've had. So 750 people here almost. So hit the like button for us. And if you guys do that in 10 minutes, or I guess as soon as we get an update on the late slate ownership, because it's going to move around a little bit here with Schroeder, I'll give you guys the top 5 projected owned plays on DraftKings and FanDuel. It only seems fair. You guys don't have to get to 1,000 likes because I guess that would be impossible with only 750 people in here. But get us as close as we can. Hit the like button if you're watching the show right now. I'll leave you guys those top owned projections or top ownership projections for DraftKings and FanDuel coming up in 10 minutes. But Caruso's rates. So let's take a look at this real fast. And I think it's interesting because Caruso really, not a high usage guy, obviously, but playing alongside LeBron, 150 minutes for Caruso this year. You could probably get more going back to last year, but I'm just going to focus on this year. 17% usage for Caruso. The assist rate for him, 16%. The rebounding rate, he's not a great rebounder anyway. So, but around line 5.5% for him is the total amount of the rebounds he's picking up there. So I feel like Caruso, just one of those guys where we've talked about it a couple times with role players, if they just get the minutes, that's the key part for them. Caruso, I think, looks like a pretty safe play and one that to me on a per minute basis, I would think is probably a little more viable than Corey Joseph. If you were just to, worry about the ceiling, the floor relative to the ceiling rather, I think Caruso looks solid here. Like I don't see him taking that big of a drop. So the projections for him won't be stellar by any stretch, but at his price, I don't see any reason to move away from Caruso.
No, not at all. I mean, I said that at least relative to what we think ownership is going to be. I have more exposure to Caruso than I do to Corey Joseph right now, and that goes for both FanDuel and DraftKings. DraftKings Caruso is cheaper than Corey Joseph, but even on FanDuel, we're the exact same price. They're both 3,800. I'm updating my lineups right now, and they're my 2 most rostered point guards, but I have slightly more of Caruso than I do Joseph.
Yeah, I think for me, it's going to be a pretty wide chasm here because I guess I had enough room to swap to both or swap around with both. And Caruso, I just feel pretty confident, 0.78 fantasy points per minute. And our boy, Stephen Leibovitz in the YouTube chat asking too, if these rates include AD being off. So yeah, it's without AD and without Schroeder. So really, not a gigantic sample size, but actually more with those 2 guys off than I would have thought, where you have 320 minutes for LeBron. There's another thing too with LeBron. I mean, Adam talks about it a lot in the deeper dive. I've certainly talked about it on content. A lot of our guys have talked about LeBron's rates without AD. And it seems like, they're a small uptick up, but without Dennis Schroeder too, I think you're seeing an even bigger jump for LeBron. So, he wasn't a guy that I had 100% of, but was my second highest owned guy behind Giannis, who hopefully will salvage here down the home stretch. But LeBron, I think, if you're optimizing, if you're swap-optimizing right now for the main slate, or even if you're looking more heavily at the late slate, I do feel like LeBron is probably unfadable is a tough word, Greg, but I do feel like he's pretty close to unfadable with the rates being where they are. The usage for him gets up to 34%, assist rate right in line, rebounding still pretty high. Like LeBron, to me, I just don't know how he doesn't have a day that's befitting his price.
Yeah, so LeBron, now that I'm making all the changes, everything, he's my most rostered player on FanDuel and DraftKings. And the reason being is because now that we have all this extra value available to us with the Alex Caruso news and Dennis Schroeder out, so not only is LeBron individually a stronger play with a better projection, but we also have a lot of value available to it where it's just easier to pay up for people. And considering that we already have Giannis locked, and I think that LeBron is a better play than James Harden, that's a priority for me, is getting up to LeBron right now.
Yeah, in terms of a raw projection, I would have LeBron by about 6 fantasy points over Harden. And, that seems a little bit lofty, but that's sort of what happens when you lose a guy like Schroeder, who's had, pretty noteworthy usage. The usage rate too is going to be a little bit higher without AD. So I think to me, this spot without Schroeder, a bit of a surprise here last minute. And obviously worth pointing out too, make sure you don't have any Schroeder in your main slate lineups too. And obviously the late slate ones, but double check that, because even if you had to just go drop down to Caruso, I guess that's the question, Greg, would you drop immediately down to Caruso if you had Schroeder, or would you try to, I guess, would you try to weasel your way to some other money? I don't know what else you would do. I guess if you found the money, you can go to Tyrese Halliburton, but $400 might not be in a lot of people's lineups.
Yeah, so I mean, here's what makes the late swapping situation at least fairly easy. Is that so? All right, Dennis Schroeder's out. Even if you have him in your lineups on FanDuel or DraftKings, only one of the 3 games is locked so far. So we still have 67% of the players available in the pool. So it stands to reason that you have a lot of available lineups, a lot of available spots in your lineups to be able to, just sweat, swap, and spit them around. And I was trying to get that out just as you got the wine in your mouth, because I was hoping I could just spit on it.
No spit. I do not. I did once when we were doing the Madden streams for FanDuel for a while. There was, at the end of them, I did like a champagne bath because we had the Sim Super Bowl, and I felt like it was a good time to do it. And then I accidentally got it in my eye and all over the laptop. It was one of the biggest catastrophes I've ever had on stream. So since then, I'm always extra careful. You got to. I can't even make the joke I was going to make, but it involves swallowing. The less said, the better.
And by the way, on the Giannis thing about him coming back and have a big fourth quarter, might not even get the chance because the Bucks are down 17 right now.
They were just down 20, so I think it's actually getting better.
Oh, all right, yeah, they're really on the upswing. But to the point before, there's enough players available that I don't think that there's something where it's like, oh no, what do I do about leaving salary on the table? Do I go all the way down to Caruso? You go down to Caruso because he's a really good value player right now, and then you just spend the money elsewhere.
Yeah, no, I think that's a fair point where you're probably going to have a good amount of roster spots out there. And this is one time we're having the 2 games going off at the same time. It does seem like it's going to be helpful for a lot of people out there swapping on the 3-game main slate. This is a big showdown game too, which I'm not playing the showdown for, the interest of full disclosure, but I did take a quick look at it. And I would think now initially I was trying to figure out how to get away from LeBron as captain, though at this point, Harden's higher priced. LeBron at captain to me seems, I was going to say like a slam dunk and then hate myself, but it does seem like a slam dunk to put LeBron at captain at this point for me for a showdown slate. Greg, do you feel like that would be the move you would want to make there for the DraftKings showdown?
Oh yeah, I think it's a touchdown. I think, I mean, I have LeBron projected quite a bit higher than Harden now that Dennis Schroeder's out and obviously also AD out. So yeah, I think you pay up for LeBron, you jam in Harden, and then probably even Kyrie too, and then there's just a whole bunch of value to go to. Alex Caruso obviously being the top value play, but then also, I think Taylor Horton-Tucker looks better now. I'm going to build a showdown lineup really quick just so I could see what it actually looks like.
I was actually thinking that might be a good move. Actually, Tyler, could you pull up the showdown screen for it's the fadeaway? Actually, I guess the big one filled already. Am I seeing that correctly? That big one might have filled.
I mean, it could be because it's yeah, it did. Because I mean, it makes sense. There's only it's about 33 minutes until lock. So let's see, if you play LeBron and Harden together, you have 5,300 in leftover salary. If you play them, so LeBron at captain with Kyrie and Harden in the lineup as utility spots leaves you 39-33 left over. And then you figure that you'd go to Caruso in one of those spots, Caruso at 3,000. So then you have 2 spots left at 4,400. And
okay. I mean, so this is the question though, do we think that THT, Taylor Horton-Tucker guy everybody loves, he could easily play the backup point guard. They could also stagger the minutes and keep Caruso away from LeBron a little bit more, so he's running the backup point. Or you could see Quinn Cook sneak into the rotation for a few minutes here, and then maybe you get LeBron back out there. What do you think is most viable here? Because I do think Quinn Cook, if you gave him a few minutes at 1K flat, maybe he opens up enough to make a viable lineup.
I don't really like Quinn Cook. I don't have him projected to play very many minutes right now. I have him for 6 minutes. So with that in mind, it's just hard to imagine. He could play more. I don't think that's going to be the case right now. I think that Caruso starts at point guard, and then I think that LeBron's going to pick up most of the backup point guard minutes. I wouldn't say that you can't play Quinn Cook. That just wouldn't be the route that I would go down. I would be more apt to go to those 4 guys, like I said, LeBron a captain, then Harden, Irving, Caruso. Then you have 4,400, and then I go to KCP over Quinn Cook at 2,600. You pull him, and then you still have 6,200 for the last spot, and you could throw in DeAndre Jordan or Jeff Green or something. DeAndre Jordan would be the preferred choice there, and there we go. That's probably the chalkiest lineup possible.
Yeah, I think to me that's part of why I would consider going to Cook, because then if you get him at 1,000 and the same construction that Greg's talking about here, LeBron at captain, Caruso, Harden, Irving, then you get Quinn Cook, then you have 7,800 left and you can get Kuzma, you can get Harris, you can get Harrell. I think for me that would be, or you could really pay down and go to Green or Jordan. I think to me that's the configuration I would be curious to try the most, just because I think, Kuzma having an outlier day that props up Cook, where Cook is sort of the lever that you have to pull to get to him, would be interesting to me. That said, I normally don't like playing 1K guys, but I just feel like if there are going to be point guard minutes to go around, Cook just having a productive 10 minutes, like that could be enough for an NBA showdown. And also we did get an update here to projections. Let me see if the ownership also got a refresh, because we got 1 minute left here.
Wait, what do you mean 1 minute?
Oh, so until money time, of course, is what I mean. Not until the slate locks.
Yeah.
We have 31 minutes until the slate locks, but if the guys behind the scenes run it soon, and if anybody wants to ping me or whatever, just let me know. But hopefully that'll be coming up in a little bit. And hit the like button here. As soon as I see an update come through, I'll give you guys it, because we care here on the L3S. I'm gonna try it out and see how it feels. Like putting on a pair of pants, maybe a little tight at first, but then eventually that big booty opens it up. That was not a way to say that either.
Like Spags definitely walks, like Spags just cuts a hole out in the back of his boxers also. So it's like, look, it's accessible from everywhere.
That's, oh God, it's a horrible thing to even imagine for anybody involved. But no, whenever that happens, it's entirely organic of just wear and tear on underwear over the course of years and not getting rid of them, like a real adult man or a man in a sitcom more than anything. We got a super chat here from Jeremiah, one of our regulars. Here we go. He wants a shout out tomorrow after he wins the DK 500K fadeaway tonight with his username Sick Psychic, spelled in a real perplexing way, but we appreciate Jeremiah, one of the regulars here. And it's people really, now they're hearing what we just talked about. So it's money time, everyone. Let's get going. This is what happens when you do 3 shows in a day spread out over a serious piece of time. That's how it goes.
By the way, also, I think this is worth bringing up. Alex has Quinn Cook projected for 2 minutes.
That's not enough minutes, Greg.
No, it's not enough. It's not enough. I agree.
All right. So yeah, I'm going to paste in Alex's projection update as well to get a read on what's going on here. Let's talk about some of the other games though, because we do have 2 games going on, and I would say, people are going to now focus on the injury situations for Sacramento. And I guess this is something we can hit on first, because Sacramento is a team in flux right now, where there's been reports about Richaun Holmes warming up. Our boy News God had it in our premium Slack, where you could see all the news updates in one convenient channel there. You don't even have to see all the chat, which is extremely helpful. A lot of guys there talking all day long about the best plays, but also, breaking things down as it goes, talking about news, adjustments, all of that. But you also just have a news feed there where if you're afraid of getting fish emojied by participating in the Slack, you can also just read the news updates from News God in one convenient place. It's really helpful. So check it out at awesemo.com/join. I believe it comes with even the cheapest packages. So really easy for you to get that into your life. If you're a person who's always curious how we have news fast, it comes courtesy of our boy El Negro Loco, and doing his job as the News God and emeritus, the News God emeritus there. No, is that the right term? Whatever. Who cares? We got the Kings side here. Do you have any concerns about Holmes playing? Because given the year we've had, and Greg and I were talking about before the show, where I think Greg had thought that he was initially doubtful, but I pulled up the 5:30 injury report, or 5:30 this time, West Coast time, 8:30 East Coast time. And we had Holmes is out, Barnes is out officially. So like out on the report, but then we're seeing news reports that Holmes may warm up. So how does this affect things for you, Greg? Because Whiteside is a very important play for me today. And I got to tell you, I don't want to have a Holmes surprise start as the exact inverse of the Draymond situation yesterday.
Well, the good news is that we have a starting lineup for the Kings, it looks like. And,
I see it. Give it to the people, though. You got it first.
All right. So he isn't in the starting lineup, so I'm not concerned about it. Like I assume that he's not coming off the bench or anything like that, but here, starting lineup, which, by the way, could teams and reporters not do this? Or was that the Heat starting lineup? I hate when they give the players Twitter handles in the starting lineup. Because like I don't know who. I was looking at the Heat one that right now that just came through, and it's like Debo 20 in the starting lineup. It's like I don't know. Like I have to click on the player and try to figure out who the starting lineup is. But anyway, starting front court is Marvin Bagley and Nemanja Bjelica. So that definitely alleviates any concern about Richaun Holmes potentially playing. So total starting lineup: De'Aaron Fox, Buddy Hield, Glenn Robinson the third, Nemanja Bjelica, and Marvin Bagley the third. That is this the first time in NBA history there's been two the thirds in the same starting lineup?
If only they still had Frank Mason, and if only Frank Mason were competent and his groin worked.
Yeah, Frank Mason. Go trot Frank Mason out there with his half a leg, and so we get a three man.
Oh, we would have a hole because we'd have 3/3.
Yeah.
Only on the L3S, so you're gonna get this kind of three base humor.
This is where you get all the clever fraction jokes. Like who else is doing this late at night? Who else is getting trolled, giving out starting lineups that may or may not be real, like Josh and I were earlier with the Raptors because we're idiots. We also have a Nets starting lineup here: James Harden, Kyrie Irving, Bruce Brown, Joe Harris, and Jeff Green. So no DeAndre Jordan starting for the Nets. So there's a lot to unpack here because these are two interesting starting lineups. I'm happy to see Bjelica start. I actually thought it was going to be Whiteside as the starter, so that's going to make me shuffle some stuff up a little bit. Whiteside's still a really strong play, though, but this downgrades Whiteside a little bit for me and bumps up Bjelica. The other thing to consider here also, no Corey Joseph starting. That's very significant.
Yeah, I think that to me, is helpful because I didn't have a ton of him anyway. But I do think that, Corey Joseph not starting, I think probably a guy you don't want a ton of. Also, we got ownership updated here. Thanks to Tom, our CEO, is not only doing all the important business things for us, helping us stay paid and happily employed, but also doing the ownership run here late at night. So we'll see what we got here. And honestly, you guys hit the like button well enough. You want to add some more likes. We got almost 1,000 people in here. So shout out to all you guys tuning in around this time every day. Whenever there is a late slate, actually, really every 5 days a week, Monday to Friday, whether there's a late slate or a showdown slate, we're doing it an hour before that lock. So just tune into the channel then, and you'll usually find me and either Greg or Eric or Emac, some of my pals here joining for the show. But here's the ownership update, which I'll give to you guys for free. Top 5 owned plays on DraftKings. And of course, you can always get these yourselves and make Tom happy by getting a membership at awesemo.com/join. Number 1, LeBron at 73%. Number 2, and this is DraftKings. Number 2, James Harden at 49%. Number 3, Bam Adebayo at 44%. Number 4, Hassan Whiteside at 43%. And number 5, Jimmy Butler at 41%. Greg, do any of these guys jump out to you as being ones you want to move away from? Because I feel like Whiteside not starting, given that 43% actually seems kind of reasonable. Like you're still taking a risk here, but I still don't hate him at that price point, assuming that Bagley's minutes are going to be limited. You're probably seeing a split there at center. So maybe you could expect 24 minutes from Whiteside, maybe 22. I don't hate him at that price and 43% ownership.
No, so I'm still going to have exposure to Whiteside, but I was well over that 43% number before we had this news. And so now he's probably somebody who I'm going to go from like 70% of my lineups to, I don't know, maybe like 50 or something. I don't know for sure just because I haven't updated them yet. And I'm talking about the main slate right now. But yeah, I mean, there's just a lot of starting, and also Rashawn Holmes officially out now. But it's just, there's a lot of lineup news coming in kind of all at once.
Yeah, that's where it makes some sense. And I'm willing to still get above the field on Whiteside in the hopes, like the revenge narrative. I know people out there love a good revenge narrative. We talk about it too, because we get it. That's, what you guys want to hear about. You want to at least know that we know that Hassan Whiteside used to play against the Miami Heat and also left with a good degree of acrimony there. I do think, though, that I still feel comfortable playing a good amount of Whiteside today. And if people are going to be less on him, great. I just think it's, for me, a spot that at this point, I don't want to swap. I mean, what would you even do if you were to swap off Whiteside at this point? I guess you could maybe get cheaper in a couple spots and then try to get one more stud in. What would you do at center if you were to swap off of Whiteside?
All right, so let's talk about it from the two different sites, right? So on FanDuel, my favorite center play is Kelly Olynyk, and there's also a pretty big price gap in between them. So I'm going to have more exposure to Kelly Olynyk. Hassan Whiteside is my second most rostered center on FanDuel, but I would go, if possible, depending on what your lineups look like and what salary you have available, I would go down to Olynyk, and then I'd try to upgrade at one. And then at point guard, if you have Corey Joseph at this point, that's an easy swap over to Alex Caruso at this point with Corey Joseph not starting.
We got the news, too, that Wes Matthews will be starting for the Lakers. It's LeBron, Caldwell Pope, Matthews, Kuzma, and Gasol. So we are the Quinn Cook chance here already out the probably not shooting a lot. But Greg, what do you think about this? Because I still don't love Wes Matthews, but Caruso, I think, still in play. I think there's a higher probability of him closing. I don't think that one of Matthews or Caldwell Pope would not close, would be my guess.
Yeah, exposure to Bryn Forbes starting to look better all of a sudden because Alex Caruso is still a viable play. But I mean, now I think Alex Caruso and Corey Joseph, neither of them look like primary options that I'm dying to get to. Both of them in play, guys I'm going to have exposure to. But both of them take a hit with neither of them in the starting lineup at this point. Although Alex Caruso didn't really take a hit, he's still up in it to what we thought of him earlier because Dennis Schroeder isn't out. But I think less of Alex Caruso than I thought of him 6 minutes ago. If that follows, that train of thought.
It's honestly, it's crazy that for even these late games, we're still having news like this that changes everything while we're doing a show. And it's very stressful to me. Obviously, the Draymond, as I called it in the premium Slack, Draymond gate that occurred yesterday, the biggest controversy in DFS of 2021, at least February of 2021. I would say that it's insane to me that we can't just get lineups in like, to have these guys in or out by the end of live before lock, I feel like would be my request here. I know, Greg, you have the hotline to Adam Silver. It's where you get all your great tips, but maybe tell him like, hey, let's just get a lot of gambling going on out there. Like, let's just have this be done by 4.
By the way, is what happened with Draymond Green yesterday and then us kind of interacting with that troll, did that help our numbers today? Is that why we have a couple extra people in? Did that just raise a bunch of awareness for the Late Show?
Your viral marketing stunt for the L3S really paid off where you entered Draymond Green, it didn't change your lineups, then had one deranged Twitter user come after us. Really, it all paid off. It was a long con, but it paid off.
One guy who, by the way, he followed 6 people, had 0 followers, and just was so shook by me getting some likes by going back and forth with him, and everybody just thinking he was an idiot that he just had to delete himself off the internet. He might be watching right now, by the way. If you are, show yourself in the YouTube chat.
I think if he were, we would be getting some angry comments from a fake name in the channel right now. And it's a very positive chat. We appreciate all you guys tuning in. And again, tune in every day because we're doing this every day. A lot of days of me and Greg doing it, but also some Eric Lindquist, also me, Mac, on the show. So tune in here. It's one of our new franchises here on the channel. So we appreciate you guys. And you're part of a growing flagship show, the L3S, as we like to call it, the Late Slate Sweat and Swap. Man, I want to see another minutes update now from, I feel bad. Honestly, like poor Alex and Tom and all of our guys behind the scenes used to be able to relax a little and get some time to decompress a little bit more towards night and, start to, make their lineups still, but at least not have to change everything and then make the lineups. And that is not the case anymore in the NBA. No,
especially not with COVID times, because that's really what it looks like here with Dennis Schroeder. It looks like this was, we don't know if he tested positive for COVID, but somebody did. He came in contact with it, but that's leading to a lot of players getting ruled out, games getting canceled randomly. Which that's the easiest scenario for projection. You just take that game off the slate and no real sweat there. But yeah, like here all of a sudden we have to put Alex Caruso potentially in the starting lineup. Then you have to take Alex Caruso out. We got to figure out what to do with Dennis Schroeder's minutes. We got to all dislike Quinn Cook at the same time. It's a lot of moving parts.
And we're going to jump back to FanDuel ownership. Brett's asking, but Michael Hartley says, shout me out. I'll join right now. Look, I'm a man of my word. I hope you are, Michael, but here's your shout out. Shout out Michael Hartley. So go to awesemo.com/join right now. And honestly, get a year-long premium package. I think that's the best money you'll ever spend. You didn't choose what package you were going to get. I got to choose. So that's the one you're putting here. And Tom can wire me the commission directly to that. Let's talk about the FanDuel ownership real fast. Your top 5 plays on there. LeBron, number 1 at 77%. Number 2, Bam Adebayo at 59%. Number 3, Jimmy Butler at 53%. Number 4, De'Aaron Fox at 52%. And number 5, James Harden at 49%, a guy we're going to need to dig into a little bit more here. But Greg, these guys here, LeBron, Bam, Jimmy Butler, De'Aaron Fox, and Harden, any of them jump out to you as being overowned by being one of the top 5 owned guys for the FanDuel night slate?
No, not at all. I think that's all. I think that's all really sensible. LeBron in particular, I think is somebody we talked about before. Somebody who almost have to get, just especially because small forward is such a thin position on FanDuel. I actually can't imagine making lineups without LeBron at this point. And rarely do I say somebody is an all-in play. But for me, late slate, that's the case for LeBron. And then in terms of my main slate lineups, I'm swapping LeBron in as many places as I can.
Yeah, I would agree. LeBron, to me, if you can somehow, you're probably not gonna be able to get 100% at this point, or maybe you can, but if you can, I think it's the move at this juncture where it's just everything's going to flow through him, and especially not even having Caruso out there. Like in the projections update that we had about 20 minutes ago, Caruso was in for 30 minutes or so. Like that's not going to probably be the case. Maybe honestly, he still could get to 30, I guess, because Alex did have Wes Matthews getting 27 as part of this update. That's actually interesting that he went heavy Wes Matthews. Makes me sad though. Poor Quinn Cook. Remember when he was a world champion, and now where is he? He's just a mascot. He's basically the Darko Milicic for the Lakers.
No, now he's a 2-time world champion.
Yeah, but he's still a mascot world champion.
No, he's not even a mascot. Nobody thinks about him. Nobody's thinking about nobody's thinking about the Lakers and thinking of Quinn Cook as the mascot. Who would be the mascot of the Lakers? It's still LeBron, I guess.
Yeah, it's probably, I mean, but no, because a mascot can't be like the best player. It just has to be like some stupid player on the bench that people find like quirky and charming. And I don't know who that, honestly don't, it's probably Caruso, I guess, if we had to pick a mascot.
Actually, it's easily Caruso.
Yeah.
Caruso, so last year, I can't, there was some point during the season where people tallied all the articles that were written by Bleacher Report, and Alex Caruso through the first like 2 months of the season was the second most tweeted about player by Bleacher Report, because that's what the people love.
That probably shouldn't be the case.
It was. And hey,
I mean, it shouldn't be, but I get why it would be.
Top 10 in All-Star voting by the fans.
The people do love a good meme out there. That's always the way that it goes. Let's talk about the Nets, though, because I think it is important to dig in a little bit more on them. The Nets, a team that we maybe haven't hit on enough here, but I think it's sort of self-evident, especially if you watch the shows throughout the day. They haven't had any injury news that changes things too much other than, not having DeAndre Jordan starting. I guess that's one news item that may be worth digging in a little bit more. But Harden and Kyrie, clearly the top plays here. Harden, I would say, for me, going to be more of a priority play. I think that relative to ownership, though, Kyrie is going to be 11% less owned in the late slate, I believe, maybe a little bit more than that. Actually, I don't think I pasted this into the sheet. Harden's going to be 48%. Kyrie is at, so a little bit less than that now in the most recent run of ownership, but still a spot where there's going to be more ownership going to Harden than to Kyrie. Greg, if you were accounting for that, would you still favor Harden, or would you want to go Kyrie's way more, even accounting for the fact that he doesn't assist as much, but scoring wise could easily have the ceiling of a Harden if he does take some of those shots off the table?
Yeah, so I still like Harden more than Kyrie, and there's the main reason for it is, well, two reasons. Number one, I haven't projected for a lot more fantasy points, but then number two, we have a lot of value available to us on both the main slate and the late slate. So even if I like Corey Joseph and Alex Caruso a little bit less than I thought they're both starting, they're still both terrific value plays overall per dollar. Then we have Hassan Whiteside is still a good value play on DraftKings. Bielitsa is a good value play on both FanDuel and DraftKings. So then we have to spend our money up somewhere. And on most 2-game slates, we're really hurting for value. That's not the case on this one. It's easy enough to spend up. So it's not difficult to get lineups with both Harden and LeBron in them.
Yeah, no, I think that's reasonable. And I would still favor Harden as well. I just feel like it's a nice spot. Doesn't mean you shouldn't get any Kyrie exposure, whether it be on the main slate or in the late slate. But I would say overall, just banking on Harden here because he just does more. And honestly, for him, the usage is getting to the point where it's close enough to Kyrie. When you talk about a 45% assist rate plus having the same usage, even at a slightly higher price point, I think finding ways to get to Harden does seem like the move. And I'm going to do one more swap demise here because honestly, just why not? Why not at this point? Let's see if we got any questions on the premium side. We can get one super chat here, which for FanDuel, Greg, I feel like this may be your realm of expertise, but Isaiah Hill is asking, would you fade Bam on FanDuel in order to pay down? For a late slate in particular, where there's not a lot of great center options, would you want to do that and fade Bam?
So Bam is a power forward on FanDuel.
My bad.
He's still a priority for me. To me, the two top power forwards on FanDuel, there's three that are really strong plays overall. It's Bielitsa, Bagley, and Adebayo. But the two that I think are priorities for the late slate are Bielitsa and Adebayo. I would be on Bagley, and I am on Bagley to an extent, except the reason I like the other two guys more is because there are still some concerns about Marvin Bagley's minutes. He's still going to be on a minutes restriction. We don't know exactly what that number is going to be. He only played, I think it was 21 or 22 minutes last game. It was, 21 minutes last game against the Nets. He's going to have the minutes restriction lifted, but we don't know exactly what that means. Is he going to play 28 minutes? Is he going to play 24 minutes? He can play 22. That's more than 21. But the exact number is always a little hard to nail down when players have minutes restrictions. Then also sometimes players' minutes restrictions get lifted and they go, he's available to play 30 minutes now. And then you find out that, all right, he's available to play 30, but he still only played 26. So given some of the uncertainty with Marvin Bagley's minutes, he's my third favorite power forward on FanDuel. Number one, Bielitsa, number two, Adebayo.
I think Bielitsa starting to me just seems now like he should be the safest play amidst all, a lot of the value plays. And Caruso still, the minutes should definitely be there. But I feel like overall, I'm with you. Like Corey Joseph has definitely gone down for me. I'm actually going to swap him out of my night slate lineups here because Corey Joseph to me, like a low usage guy who's now going to be in the same group as Tyrese Halliburton. Like I just don't. Corey Joseph, I would be content if I had 0% of now at this point.
I'm not going to have 0%, but I'm going to have a lot less than I did. Certainly less than I did at lock.
Do you think Bruce Brown's viable at all? Because I think seeing him for the late slate, let me double check to make sure that I'm not speaking out of turn, that I don't believe I got him. No, I didn't get him for my main slate swaptimizing, but I think for the late slate at his price point, I feel like he's appealing because he's close enough to Corey Joseph. So he'll, sort of could cut away from that vestigial ownership that'll go to Corey Joseph for the news coming in late that he's not starting. People sometimes don't pay enough attention closer to lock, especially for the late slate, which is why we do this show, why we talk a lot about swaptimizing and paying attention if you can, obviously, with insanity based reasons. But the best EV you can give yourself is swaptimizing and paying this attention down the stretch. But do you see Bruce Brown being viable? Because I think I'm putting him in for one lineup now and one where I am getting away from Corey Joseph.
Viable, but not a priority play. I agree with you. I think over Corey Joseph, that's reasonable, especially because Bruce Brown is starting and Corey Joseph is not. We have the Nets starting lineup, just to reiterate, James Harden, Kyrie Irving, Bruce Brown, Joe Harris, and Jeff Green. That means no DeAndre Jordan in the starting lineup. I'm just being really cautious when I read lineups now after the faux pas by Josh and I earlier in the day, where for some reason we thought that Norman Powell wasn't starting because we can't read. But yeah, so Bruce Brown's starting. Corey Joseph is not starting for the Kings. So Bruce Brown would be a slightly higher priority play, especially because Corey Joseph is somebody who's been touted basically all day, right? Going back to early articles, the first stuff everybody wrote about today was probably that Corey Joseph is going to be one of the top plays for the Kings. And I'm sure that people still have in their head, they have to play Corey Joseph. And it's not that I'm fading Corey Joseph, like I said before, but I'm lowering exposure and there's other value plays I like more than him. So given the likely difference in ownership between Joseph and Brown, I think that Brown's the better tournament option.
And let's take a couple questions in the premium Slack. And I think we need to talk more about the Heat too fast, because I want to make sure I get my ideas about them out of the way, because some of the injury news has made us obviously have to focus in a little bit more in addition to talking about the main slate things that we do here. But Iron Maiden 2 in the premium Slack asking, would you swap off Kojo to Caruso in your best lineups? That's what I did, Greg, but give the official take here. Would you swap off Corey Joseph to go to Caruso?
Yeah, I have a lot more exposure to Caruso than Corey Joseph at this point. So that is absolutely something I would do. I have Caruso project for more fantasy points also.
And Nick in the premium Slack asking Caruso, KCP, Matthews, and Joseph. Out of that four, I guess he says help SOS. So it's really dire here. I would have appreciated setting that in a bottle if you can, because I think that's the kind of SOSs I like to see. But how do you feel about Caruso, KCP, Matthews, Joseph? Which of those four would you want the most?
Alex Caruso.
Okay, yeah, I'm with you on it. It's really me, Lane, asking LeBron or Kyrie and Butler. Yes, that says what you think it does for the main slate. So if you could get Kyrie and Butler, or you can swap your way to LeBron for a cash lineup, Greg, would you think that would be the move? I do think for cash, swapping to LeBron would be the move.
I'm trying to bring it. That was in Slack, right?
Yeah, it's really me, Lane.
I can't find it. There's a bunch of messages there. Just read me off the names again.
LeBron or Kyrie and Butler. So like basically he can have Kyrie and Butler, or he could swap to LeBron, and I guess probably some other value play, which if it's a value play that's owned, I feel like that's a slam dunk for LeBron and whatever the value play is.
There we go. I like it. Bring up the slam dunk. Yes, bring up the slam dunk. And I agree. Yeah, you swap to LeBron. I think it's a real 3-pointer. That's an and one. I would do that. So it depends who the value play is. If you're getting to Alex Caruso, then yes, I think that's a good swap. But if you're getting to, I don't know, if that swap you already have Caruso and then instead you're just throwing in some other not good play, then I wouldn't make this. It's hard to know without knowing who else he's swapping to.
So the Miami Heat, we haven't talked about much. And I think Jimmy Butler is kind of the obvious play here, one that you should be getting some exposure to. For the most part, he's going to be 41% owned on DK. He's going to be also highly owned on FanDuel. He's been a monster in games without Goran Dragic this year. The usage takes a jump. The assist rate takes a jump. Really one of the best per minute players in this situation over the last couple of weeks, especially. So I think that one's obvious, but I do think that there's room to get to guys like Kendrick Nunn, room to get to Duncan Robinson for one main reason here. Going against Sacramento is just such a plus matchup for 3-point shooting. And we talked about it on the tip off earlier where Ben pointed it out. Ben Rasa, of course, so smart, even if Milwaukee doesn't win this game, which actually he might look smarter by the minute here because Milwaukee's closing this gap pretty fast. You mentioned the 3-point shooting and a reason why he liked Kendrick Nunn. And I think Nunn here, having the ability to create his own shot from three is interesting, especially going against the Kings, who limit assisted 3-pointers fairly well. It's all relative. They still give up a good amount, but they do limit them a bit more than league average. But I think Nunn and Robinson, to me, are plays that are now going to be undervalued because of the value out there. And that's sort of what happens to mid-price range guys, where Robinson looked like a quality value play before. Now people are going to go to Caruso. Now people are going to go to Wesley Matthews. I think Duncan Robinson is going to be slapped down a little bit too much here. All he does is score, but if there's ever a spot where all you can do is score, I think doing it in Sacramento or against Sacramento would be the spot. But how do you feel about the Miami Heat, role players here?
So I have 20% exposure to Duncan Robinson on DraftKings. On FanDuel, I have him Not very much on FanDuel, at least for the main slate. I have him sub 10% at this point. So at least on DraftKings, where there's more positional flexibility, I think he makes sense. On FanDuel, it was hard for me to get to him just because I think LeBron has to take up one of those small forward spots at this point, and then that just limits the amount of flexibility elsewhere. But yeah, I think Duncan Robinson is somebody who definitely is in play. If you have the amount of salary left over to get to Duncan Robinson, I'm fine, but I'm not going to target him. I'm not saying like I have to play Duncan Robinson for this. Like I said, I have 20% Duncan Robinson, and that's a number that I'm comfortable with.
I mean, you would be with the field, so I think that's probably about right. And, I get it. Like, I think being with the field is fair. I think if you get a little bit more, or honestly, if it ends up being a little bit lower, which does sometimes happen, and Duncan Robinson has been unimpressive enough that maybe that is the case here. I just feel like Duncan, to me, a little bit overlooked. People I know, when you talk about him in chat for the most part, which is, sometimes a helpful gauge, is how people respond sort of viscerally to certain guys. People just don't like Duncan because he doesn't add a lot of peripherals. But, sometimes as we see, scoring with Norman Powell today, like Norman Powell doesn't do a lot peripherally either. But if you put up enough buckets, if you get enough buckets, you could say it's a slam dunk, Greg.
I mean, it's a total 4-point play right there. I mean, so Norman Powell. The other thing also with Norman Powell is that he's shooting 73% from the field, which, I mean, that'll help too. If you're gonna get a guy who's a moderately high usage player that's gonna make over 70% of the shots, they're probably gonna have a good fantasy game. But also, Norman Powell scored almost all his fantasy points in the first quarter of that game, and then hasn't really done all that much since, but he scored so many fantasy points in the first quarter that it didn't really matter.
Yeah, I think that's fair. A couple more questions on the premium Slack. We got Fox and KCP or Halliburton and Caruso. We're going to take Joseph out of this equation because we've already given that take. So Fox and KCP or Halliburton and Caruso for FanDuel?
Halliburton and Caruso. I like Halliburton a ton on FanDuel.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Yeah, I like Halliburton and Caruso as well overall. And though FanDuel, man, how does that happen though? Going from Fox and KCP to Halliburton and Caruso, like there feels like there should be a bigger price gap between those two.
Halliburton's really cheap on FanDuel. He is 5,500.
Okay, interesting. Let's see. Negative correlation on Olynyk and Bam on FanDuel for late night. Do you feel like they correlate negatively? I don't hate the idea. Like there's probably a little bit of a draw away, but for the most part, they've played enough minutes together where I wouldn't really sweat it. If you like that play, to be clear, I don't love Kelly Olynyk by any stretch.
They also score their fantasy points in different ways. Kelly Olynyk is pretty reliant on being able to knock down shots, whereas Bam Adebayo, he's going to have rebounds, he's going to get assists, he's going to block shots. So there's a whole bunch of avenues where Bam Adebayo scores points. Like you might as well think of Kelly Olynyk as just a forward or a shooting guard or something, because that's where most of his fantasy points are going to come from. I mean, he's going to pull down some rebounds also, but he's not somebody I would think of as massively negatively correlated with Bam Adebayo, especially because Adebayo is getting his minutes no matter what. Olynyk's minutes are totally unpredictable. I was talking about this with Josh on Live Before Lock. If you look at Kelly Olynyk's minutes over the last handful of games, he has played in the last 31 minutes, 14 minutes, and 23 minutes. You cannot, there's no way to know how many minutes he's played. The last three he's played as little as 14, as many as 31. They had another game we played in between. So the range of minutes there is really wide, but that also is, to me, what makes him a pretty decent GPP play, at least on FanDuel, where there's only a few guys to choose from at center.
Melissa asking, would you swap Joseph with Hero, Caruso, or none? I'm interesting that you could swap Joseph with all those guys, but which of the three would you want, I guess, if this person has a lot of money to go around?
The names were none.
Hero and Caruso.
That would be Hero amongst those three players.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't seem like that should be a swap you could make, but Hero's going to be the best projected play out of all of them, and really the only reason you'd get off of him for ownership, but he's not going to be that owned. So yeah, Hero out of that group, but the other guys are still good value. It's just not kind of the same play. Caruso and Kyrie or none and Fox for FanDuel.
Caruso and Kyrie or. It is so hard for me to keep track of all the names when they're read off. Give me the names one more time.
Caruso and Kyrie, or Kendrick Nunn and De'Aaron Fox for FanDuel.
Nunn and Fox.
Let's see. Bielitsa and Iguodala, or Caruso and KCP for DKGPP. I guess Bielitsa and Iguodala, I guess, but holy, you're taking a hit on Iguodala. But he's going to be low owned, and I think he's in the projection range, so I would take it.
Well, I'll say this. Of those four players, I like Bielitsa the most by far. So that's what's going to make me pick that combination.
The issue for me is I just don't know that Caruso and KCP have an outlier day together. I think they're going to be in separate groups, so whatever. But I agree, Bjelica would be my favorite play out of that group. Let's see. For the cash game lineup that we were talking about earlier, it's Braun, Whiteside, and Hero, or Kyrie, Butler, and Matthews for cash. I would go Braun, Whiteside, and Hero still.
Yeah, the LeBron combination.
All right, going to the YouTube chat, see if you guys have any questions. Sweating and Swapping, baby, says Gabriel Rios. We appreciate you here on the L3S. Whiteside or Harrell for FanDuel? That's an interesting one. I do think Harrell's a little undervalued for the slate. On DraftKings, his price is so weird. On FanDuel, though, maybe a different story, Greg. So how do you feel about Whiteside or Harrell?
Yeah, give me Whiteside. The prices are pretty similar, but I still have Whiteside projected for slightly more fantasy points. Also $200 less, so that $200 could help you a little bit. But yeah, I still think Whiteside's the better option.
Anthony's asking Butler or Bam for more fantasy points. Alex has Butler by about 1.6. I have Butler by a bit more, so I would favor Butler on both wavelengths there.
I have Butler for more fantasy points as well, so Jimmy Butler.
Our boy Brad asking Caruso and Green or Harrell and KCP for Showdown.
Caruso and Green
or Harrell and KCP.
Caruso and Green.
Yeah, I think it's Caruso and Green. That's one of those Showdown ones where I really would like to be able to play both sides because one is going to be so much less owned. But yeah, that's pretty much it. And we are locked. So again, thank you to all you guys who tuned in. Hope for the first time, come back. We'll be doing this tomorrow night again. Tomorrow will be me and Eric Lindquist doing the late slate, and then Greg will be back next week doing some shows with me too. In addition to all of his usual run of shows, Greg, what's the plugs that we have coming up here for you tomorrow?
Yeah, follow me on Twitter at GEhrenbergDFS because for all we know, somebody could get swapped in 3 minutes. It could get scratched 3 minutes from now, and that could lead to all kinds of hijinks on Twitter. So if nothing else, go follow me for that. And I don't know, maybe people will just try to recreate the scenario from yesterday and just start tweeting crap at me on Twitter to see what happens.
Somebody in the YouTube chat said Watson to the Saints, which I don't think is actual news, but boy, if it were, that'd be terrible. David Porter saying, thanks guys for never answering my questions. We look at the premium Slack first and foremost, and then the YouTube chat is just grabbing whatever I see on the screen. But if you want to get questions answered, the premium Slack is the way. And of course, you get the projections, the ownership projections, and the boom bust tool at awesemo.com/join. So get in there, hit the subscribe button if you haven't yet, hit the like button too, and come back for all the content tomorrow. I'll be on Live Before Lock, and I'll be on the late slate, swapping and sweating with all you guys. So enjoy tonight's games. See you tomorrow. Good night.